What's up, everybody? I swear I have meant to make content for this channel, but as you probably can tell, it's been about a year since my last upload, probably more by the time this one comes out, so, oops. Yeah, that's how it is. I'm a full-time college student, and I have a lot of stuff to do, basically all the time. That's mostly what's been keeping me from doing stuff. But it also gives me a little bit of insight on today's topic, which is Zoom, and specifically how to use Zoom for remote karate learning. Now, I was really slow on this topic. I've had a script written for about 3 weeks at this point, and in the time between writing a script and, getting around to sit down and film this, personal favorite YouTuber of mine, Jesse Enkamp, has already put out a video about how to do martial arts classes over Zoom. So let's just say that from the teacher's side, this topic is pretty well covered. So I'm going to go over a few things that one can do either as a student or that one should know as a student for how to use Zoom or other remote learning tools for martial arts classes and classes more generally. This is going to be taking mostly from my experiences with taking a lot of college classes on Zoom, as well as a couple of martial arts seminars that I've been very lucky enough to be able to attend. And hopefully this is going to be somewhat informative, or at least chase that trending topic just a little bit so that I can have any subscribers. So let's get into it. Alright, so Zoom the company was founded in 2011 by Eric Yuan, whose name I'm probably mispronouncing, and he's still the head of the company, which is called Zoom Video Communications. While we probably all know them for their classroom solution and remote video learning solution, they offer a wide variety of services, including an internet phone system, as well as a lot of features for webinar hosting and webinar attendees. Traditional Zoom meetings allow both the hosts and attendees to send text chats and also to share files. They can view and hear other participants through webcams and microphones, conduct polls, share their screens, and a whole bunch of other features which is constantly being added to. Zoom also has the option for either attendees or the host to record meetings, which can be especially useful for people who weren't able to make the live stream time. Now, during February and March of this year, as the COVID-19 crisis has become very widespread, Zoom began offering its products to many K-12 schools free of charge, and many schools, both at the K-12 level and even some universities, have picked up on this service, which has caused their stock price to rapidly jump up and has ballooned the number of users on the service. If you haven't used Zoom for anything right now, you're probably in the minority, to be quite honest. Now, there are a lot of security issues of Zoom that other people have talked about at more length. I'll try and find some good resources and link them right about now. But suffice it to say that Zoom isn't a particularly secure platform. There are a lot of difficulties with trying to make sure that the call is encrypted, as well as the practice of Zoom bombing, which, in short, involves people unauthorizedly joining Zoom meetings and bombarding users with harassment or disgusting images. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the problems, since I'm not a tech person, that's not my specialty, but I would feel uncomfortable talking about it without at least mentioning this. Now, despite a lot of these problems, Zoom is almost certainly here to stay. Even as a lot of stay-at-home orders are being lifted by individual governors, medical professionals are definitely still recommending that we keep inside and we keep maintaining social distancing, and it's unlikely that martial arts schools are going to be opening up anytime soon, so it might be important to learn how to use Zoom as a student. Now, before talking too much about how to use Zoom, I do want to ask why dojos are using Zoom. One phrase that I've heard a lot is that schools that close, close. Many dojos, gyms, training halls rely on their month-to-month memberships in order to keep doors open, and it's a lot easier to keep a current student than it is to recruit a new one. However, dojos are non-essential businesses, so for all of the states and all of the countries that are still on lockdown, they're not going to be able to open anytime soon, and even for the ones that do open up, they're likely to choose to remain inside for some time. That's why a lot of schools have moved to using Zoom for martial arts classes, which is a move that I, for one, wholeheartedly support. I don't think that most dojos would prefer to have online classes. There are definitely a few programs that offer online martial arts instruction that have done so before this whole pandemic, but they're the vast minority. In general, pedagogy experts agree that in-person lessons are much superior to online instruction. However, These online lessons have become an essential part of maintaining a school during this time, and they keep people engaged and willing to come back once this is all blown over. So if your school or dojo is hosting a Zoom lesson, you should definitely give it a shot. However, real talk for a second, Zoom kinda sucks. Even for regular academic classes, it can be clunky at best and distracting at worst, and that goes doubly so when you're trying to teach martial arts or really anything physical over Zoom. It's a lot harder to pay attention when you're in class, especially when students aren't in the same room as the teacher. It's a lot easier to slack off or browse the internet while you're supposed to be taking notes, and in my college classes, I've had people even forget to show up for the correct times, accidentally mute themselves, accidentally mute their computer so they couldn't hear their teacher, get booted by their router in the middle of a lesson, get interrupted by parents, siblings, even pets. Really, the list goes on. Additionally, teachers aren't really able to offer students corrections as accurately, and aren't really able to demonstrate techniques as well, because the screens that we're working with are a fixed size. Even if lessons were pre-recorded on a high-quality camera and with professional sound equipment, a lot of these problems would still exist. After all, students probably aren't going to go out and buy a 4K monitor for their new extra fancy computer and upgrade their internet service just to be able to keep taking lessons in the middle of a pandemic. However, Zoom specifically has a number of different problems. If you have a shoddy internet connection, you might notice that occasionally you get booted off of Zoom calls. Zoom takes a lot of bandwidth, and it's definitely led to some problems either with being completely booted from meetings or from lagging due to a high volume of internet traffic. Additionally, there are some problems with the interface that make it especially hard to focus on one person during class. Here are some tips that I have for how to make sure that you get the best experience out of Zoom. Step 1, always make sure to put your sensei or your teacher on speaker view and pin their video. Putting someone on speaker view makes their image the largest on a screen, but it also focuses on whoever is making the most noise into their microphone at any given time, which can be difficult, especially if your fellow classmates have forgotten to mute themselves. That's why it's important to make sure to pin your instructor on the screen so that you can always see them and you can always see what they're demonstrating, even if other people are making noise. Additionally, make sure to join with your video on, but with your audio muted if at all possible. Having your video on will help your sensei or your teacher give corrections at all, but the additional noise from a lot of people talking at once can make it really hard to hear what your sensei is trying to say, both for you and other students. Now, the host of a meeting can choose to make these settings beforehand, such as automatically muting every new participant, although they can't force people to turn on their video. Additionally, the host can change who's able to share screens, or change who's able to access chat, meaning that they can control any excess noise or activity on that end. Instructors will probably want to use gallery view, which lets them see as many students at one time as possible. This view fits everyone onto a grid, which resizes based on the number of participants, and quickly gets very small. The limit for the amount of participants on a single screen is 25, and if you're lucky enough to where you have small, intimate Zoom sessions with fewer than that, great, but you might run into the problem of having a lot of people on the same call at one time. The other big thing to watch out for as a student is to adjust to the space you're working out in. Personally, where I'm filming right now, I can touch the ceiling without standing on my tiptoes, which means that any sort of weapons training is right out the window, and it's very difficult to do a lot of forms or katas, so I'm very limited in what I'm able to practice. I do have a wonderful outside space that I'm able to utilize, but some people don't have balconies, or some people's balconies are small, and they might be limited in terms of the space they're able to work in. It's not necessarily impossible to adapt to these kind of conditions. People have been adapting their training to conditions like this for basically as long as people have been doing workouts or martial arts, but it severely limits your options. So make sure before you participate in any martial arts Zoom class that you have an appropriate space, or you can find a good workaround. Instructors should also be advised to recognize that their students might not have access to a lot of the same material that they would in a dojo. A lot of students who practice Kobudo might not own their own weapons, and might only practice with borrowed weapons from the dojo that they train at. Now, all of that being said, Zoom lessons are still great for karate when there's no other option. It's definitely much better than trying to practice on your own, or trying to teach yourself through videos, which can go wrong really quickly. There are a few reasons why, and for starters, one of the biggest ones that I've noticed is motivation to train on your own. I'm very lucky that I've managed to keep up so far. In fact, right now I'm currently benched because I went for a rather long jog. But it can be very difficult to make sure you set a routine or to follow a routine. Usually the places in our training that we're most motivated to cut corners in just so happen to be the exact places that we need to work on the hardest. Having someone to practice with, even remotely, can both motivate you to actually do your workout and push you to make actual improvements. Many talented senseis and coaches can bring out the best in their students by encouraging a sort of friendly competition between students, and having this aspect, even if it's digitally, can really help take your home workouts to the next level. The other thing to mention is I've talked a lot about how hard it is to receive and give corrections over Zoom, but at the end of the day, it's still a lot easier to do that than it is to work via sending videos to someone and having them critique your videos, or trying to go without corrections. If you practice for a long time without corrections, you might find yourself developing some bad habits that you don't know are forming, and by the time someone points them out to you, it's really too late to change them, or it would require a lot of effort. That's why the ability to connect with someone who can give you instruction, even over Zoom, is much better than trying to learn based on videos where you can accidentally pick up bad habits. Finally, one of the biggest benefits that I see to Zoom is that it helps you follow a training routine. While there are a lot of resources out there, it can be really hard to come up with a personal schedule for home training, even if you're just trying to improve your fitness. There's a reason why personal training is still a booming industry, because it can be hard to create your own workout. Having a sensei or a teacher to guide you through your home workouts can make sure that you don't slack off on one particular area, and can make you get a much more rounded workout than you would be able to by trying to pull together resources on your own. All in all, Zoom isn't necessarily ideal, but it is still a much better method than not training or trying to guide your training all on your own. Now, one thing that might be crossing some of your minds is that you don't have the ability to take Zoom lessons or an equivalent like Google Hangouts or Skype or any sort of video conferencing software. Maybe your dojo doesn't offer them, maybe the times that your dojo offers them don't work for you, or maybe your internet can't handle the bandwidth. So I want to offer a few alternatives for us students to help us out with home training even if we're not able to use these video conferencing tools. I mentioned Jesse Enkamp before, and frankly, he has been doing amazingly in these times. He and his brother Oliver have put out a couple of follow-along exercises that you can do in your home that are relatively short and yet have a lot of content to them. They offer a 10-minute kata workout that helps you focus on individual aspects of your kata, a 5-minute shadowboxing routine, and a 10-minute cardio workout to keep your stamina and endurance up. If you have time, I would definitely recommend checking those out, and there are also a lot of other exercise YouTubers who have been developing home training plans to help keep you in shape. Another one of my favorites is Jaxblade, a YouTuber who comes up with workout routines based on anime and cartoon characters, which is especially fun if you're a huge nerd like I am. I'd also recommend a couple of online resources such as Derby.com, which has a lot of simple at-home workouts that are both fun and flexible. They can be modified to the level of exertion you're capable of doing, and they make sure that you have a variety to choose from. Another option is, if your dojo isn't offering Zoom workouts, you can offer your own. Now, make sure to check with your sensei or instructor first, since you don't want to be disrespectful, but as long as you have their okay, you can host your own group workouts with friends or dojo mates. A free Zoom account limits you to a 40-minute group meeting, whereas with a pro account you can host for up to 24 hours, and you can host up to 100 participants. The pro account costs about $15 a month, which might be a lot, especially if you're going through some economic hardships, but if this is something you're interested in, I'd say it's definitely worth the investment. You might also be able to get a discount if you're a student, or if you're faculty at a university or a school. Hosting your own Zoom meetings can help get people enthusiastic about practicing, and also can help you feel a little less alone, which we all need in these isolated times. Once again, though, please do run this by your sensei or instructor and get permission if you feel like you need to. You should also run it by someone who you trust, because they can give you extra advice for things that you want to work on, or to help you come up with a basic lesson plan to follow. And following off of that, if it's possible at all, reach out to your senseis or senior students for their advice. If you've been training with a dojo for really any amount of time, the instructors probably have a sense of what areas of training you ought to focus on, and can help give you direction to come up with your own home routine. Now, my final idea for what students can do at home to train martial arts during the pandemic is use this time to study other styles or fighting methods that you haven't really been introduced to. Don't necessarily try and teach yourself an entirely new system by video, but it can be helpful to look up different styles or different martial arts entirely to compare and theorize about techniques. Personally, I've found it very useful in the past to look at how other styles perform the same kata, to see what parts are the same, to see what parts have changed, since this can help me get a sense of the core concepts and help me further analyze them. Maybe try looking at how another style like Shitoryu or Uechi-ryu performs a technique or bunkai. You can also watch MMA matches or sparring fights and analyze the techniques and the mistakes that both fighters make. Try paying attention to their footwork, or what strikes tend to land the most reliably, or what counters tend to work best. Finally, if you're really in for a culture shock, it can be really useful to look outside of your own style to get a sense for what other techniques are out there. It can be world-changing for someone who primarily focuses on stand-up fighting to see how BJJ players or wrestlers handle their ground game, or for someone who's used to firm, solid stances to check out boxing footwork exercises or Muay Thai distance drills. Remember to feed your brain as much as you train your body. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this very basic look into how to use Zoom as a martial arts student, and how to use it for martial arts training specifically. I hope everybody who sees this video is staying safe and healthy, and is making time for self-care as much as possible. I'm just finishing up my junior year, and a lot of things have finally backed off, so hopefully, fingers crossed, I will actually make a few more videos for this channel. Even though this is my first upload in about a year, I've seen several nice comments come in while I've been working hard at passing my classes, and while I've been away, that have really made me keep wanting to come back. I recently switched my major to East Asian Studies, big surprise, and I've been in charge of managing my college's Goju Karate Club, which has kept me fairly busy. If you liked this video and would like to see more when they come out, I'd recommend you subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to see these videos when they actually come out. You can also like this video and leave a comment, which are both things that will help it with the algorithm, a thing that I actually know a little bit about now. And as always, make sure to train hard, and arigatou gozaimashita.